In task 2, we're going to be looking at the table structures and validations that are going to be required to be input into our tables themselves. So as you can see, we have our 4 tables. Within these tables, we're going to need to make sure that we're using the right data types for each of the elements inside. These data types will range from primary keys, which we're using auto numbers. They'll be also using short text for things like names and surnames. We're also going to be using things like short text for our telephone numbers, as a telephone number starts with a 0, and if we use a number in this instance, the 0 will be omitted when we put the data set in. When we deal with our foreign keys, we need to make sure that these foreign keys are going to be using a number, as when we use auto number and move into our relationships, the numbers generated will need to match the data types in each of the tables. So we place our foreign keys as numbers. So now let's jump into the Access database program and start to apply our data types, structures, and validation to our tables so that when we create the relationships, they work properly.
Once we gain access to Access database, we're going to need to choose to create a blank database. We do that by simply selecting the blank database option. Access is very good because this forces us to create an appropriate name to save our database with straight from the outset. So make it that it's meaningful, and in this instance we're going to use Part A and click on the Create or press Enter. What happens is you'll be displayed with this data area that we want to change by changing the view, and we're going to change it to design view, and again this forces us to create and save our tables as we go along. We need to make sure that we're using an appropriate naming convention, and in this instance we're going to use TBL to represent table, and then underscore and customer. Click OK, and this puts us into the design view stage. Here you can see that we all have a primary key and that it's automatically set as an auto number, but this primary key doesn't really have much of a meaning, so we're going to put some information in front of it, and we're going to put customer and use an underscore rather than a space. Notice the little key on the side shows that it's a primary key, and on the description element it's always good practice to make sure that we put something in here to make sure that if anybody else was to pick up the database, they know what this is for. So as you can see, this is a unique identifier, and that is the information that we're going to be putting inside of our optional area for the description. You can also put in here some information about the type of data that you're going to be putting in here, or the data type. So as you can see, we've put that's going to be auto number, and if we do anything like an input mask or a piece of data validation, we can also put that information in there so that anybody looking at the table from a snapshot point of view, they'll be able to see what we're going to do. The next one we're going to put in here is going to be the forename, and we're going to choose a data type that's appropriate for forename, and this is going to be our short text option. As you can see, there are a variety of choices we can make here, but short text is the most appropriate. Down at the bottom we have our properties, and in the properties for this field name we can choose to change the field size. Do not leave this as the default, as this is very important that we need to change these to 25 or anything most appropriate for the field information that's going to be put in there. So we need to move on to the next part, and we're going to be making an input mask for this instance of our field name, and we're going to be putting some information in to make sure that any entry will capitalize the first letter. So what we do is do a greater than symbol, a capital L to represent a capital letter, then a less than symbol, and then a series of question marks. Once we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to copy that and we're going to put it in the description, just so that it's clear to anybody, as we said before, that there is an input mask attached to this entry or field name. So because we have 25 characters in our field size, it will allow us to make sure that the first one of any entry will be capital letter. Now we're going to move on to the next entry within our field name. We're going to use surname. We're going to also choose this to be short text, and we're going to do the same again as we did with our forename and make sure that there's an input mask in there to capitalize the first letter for us. And again, good practice, just put some information inside of the description so that it's clear to the users what's going on. And as I didn't put it in the original forename one, I'm going to put in there the input mask as well, and that's going to be greater than L, capital L, less than, and then a series of question marks after. And just for good practice, I will update that one now so that it's got forename and it's got the description to the input mask that's there as well. Then, as you can see on the left hand side, the last one that we need to put in is a telephone number. Now this is very much a tripping block for most students when it comes to doing the exam, because they instinctively want to choose number because it is a phone number. But unfortunately, Access doesn't deal with numbers in the same way that we'd expect it to, because it'll omit the 0 at the beginning. So what we need to do is choose a short text option. And what we can also do is we can define the field length to the standard length of a phone number. And this is around 11 characters without any area code or country codes added. So what we're going to do is just again put some information in the description just to make sure that it's clear that this is going to be short text because the 0 would be removed. And again, this will allow us, when it comes to our exams, to show that we understand why we're doing something and the reasons behind what we've done. But what we can also do is if we go down to the properties, we're going to change the field size, as mentioned, to the standard size of a phone number, which is approximately, or is 11 characters or digits long. And we can also make sure that we've got some form of input mask attached to that as well. That input mask can allow only numbers to be entered in to our short text field. So in order for us to do that, we can do the following.
So we're going to add a validation rule to this field name, and we're going to go into the validation rule section. And in order for
so we're going to add a validation rule to this to make sure that only numbers are allowed into our short text.
Null, or
so what we're going to do is we're going to first of all make it that it is null,
square bracket,
or
exclamation mark, 0 hyphen 9, close the square bracket, and then star again. Once we've set everything how we want it to be in the table, it's good practice just to go back over the field names and check that all our data types are correct, the field sizes are also correct, and any input masks are also correctly input. This is an opportunity for us to make sure that there's going to be no issues coming into the relationships later on, or even if when we come to put the data into the database. And finally, we're going to add the customer underscore type underscore ID as a foreign key into our customer table so that we can see what customer types are inside of our customers. Lastly, once we've done all of that, we need to click on Save and Close. Next, we're going to create another table. And this time we'll click on the design view. We're going to make sure that this table is called TBL underscore ticket underscore type. Again, as we did with the customer table, we're going to jump into our data view and we're going to change the ID to be something meaningful. So we're going to put in ticket underscore type underscore ID. We're going to leave the data type to be an auto number, and we're going to put some information inside that description area just to make sure that it's clear that we know what's happening, and we're going to put that as a primary key. Next, we need to look at our ticket underscore type, and this is going to be a short text.
Next we move on to the ticket underscore cost. This time around, we need to change the data type to be currency. And if we move down to the bottom part for the properties, you'll see that the format is that this is in currency. Here we can choose to change it. If we were using European information, we could change the format to be in a euro. But obviously we're dealing with UK, so we're going to leave it as pounds. And we're going to go back up to our description section and just add a little bit more information in. So as you can see here, I've added some information relating to the ticket types. We've got our Friday, Saturday, and our camping. Now we're going to move on to the next table, which is TBL underscore ticket sales. This table is going to be dealing with a primary key again, but this time around we're going to put ticket underscore number, and instead of the data type being an auto number, we're going to change this, and we're going to change this to number. Because auto number starts from 0 or from 1, the next number will be 2, 3. As you can see in our example inside of our exam, the number starts at 1000 and then goes 1001, 2, 3, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it as a primary key, but we're going to define the number ourselves. So we're going to allow the user to input the ticket number. Then we're going to place in our first of 3 foreign keys. The next foreign key we're going to place in is customer underscore ID. This will allow us to relate the ticket number to an appropriate customer. And then finally we're going to select ticket underscore type underscore ID. Again, choosing the ID to be a number, and this will allow us to work out what type of ticket that the person has bought, whether it's a camping or a Friday or Saturday ticket.
Now that we have all of our tables, we want to now add something that's known as a presence check. A presence check will make sure that there is something entered inside of our fields, and to do that we can go inside of the validation rule option, go to the very end of the row, and you'll find there is a button with 3 dots on it. If you click on that, that will open up the expression builder. Inside the expression builder we can start to formulate and build our rules so that we can make sure that something is true. So what we can do is we can set a validation rule of is not null. This will make sure that this value cannot be omitted or missed, and that a value has to be entered. Additional to a validation rule, it's always good practice to add some validation text. This text will allow the user to see that there is a required element inside of the actual field, and the message is asking them to please enter a customer first name. As we did with the forename, we're going to follow through and use this on the surname. So we're going to open our expression builder and type in is not null, and then click OK. And as before, we're going to make sure that we've got some validation text that asks the person to please enter in a surname. At this stage, we're going to be looking at how we can make it easy for our users to use the system. As you can see, we're looking at the customer type ID here, and we don't want to remember an ID number to reference to a value. So what we can do is we can use what's known as a table lookup. In order to do that, select the lookup option
And then inside here we can choose an option to list box. Choose our row source to be a table or query. We're going to select the table that we want, and then we're going to bound the column to which the value is going to be coming from. So that's going to be the first column inside of the customer type table, and we're going to show 2 columns in the column count. So as you can see from the example here, we're just entering in some ticket number details, and we're assigning that ticket number to a customer number 1. And then you'll see now that we've added the lookup table that we can actually choose from an option of Friday, Saturday, and camping. We're now going to create another table. This time it's going to be our customer type table. So go ahead and create a new table, and then when you go inside, we're going to name this one TBL underscore customer underscore type. In here we're going to give our first field the primary key, and we're going to make this the customer underscore type underscore ID, and we're going to leave this as an auto number, and we're going to put some information inside of the description just to remind ourselves that this is actually the primary key. Then we're going to move on and make something that's very new to us, and we're going to use what's known as a value lookup. So in order for us to create a value lookup, we're going to create a new field, and we're going to call it customer type. And this time inside of our data, or the data type area, we're going to choose from the very bottom of the options that we have available, the lookup wizard. In here we want to type in the values that I want. This will open up a dialog box which will allow us to enter in the information we want and how relevant it will be. So in here we're going to give the option of guest of organizer. We're going to make a value for new, and we're going to put the final one, which is regular. We can add more columns if we want to, but this should be sufficient for us right now. What should happen once we've selected that? And we're going to add some information into the description area. This is going to be just information that is drop down box of the options available. And we're going to go into the table, and we're going to look and we're going to apply our customer ID types. So as you can see from the drop down box, we have regular, we're going to do one for new, and we're going to do one for the guest organizer. We're going to save that. Relationships within relational databases are key to their success. Relationships work by having a foreign key and a primary key link 2, 3, or even more tables together so that the data can be referenced between them. In our example of this exam paper, we're going to be pulling in all of the 4 tables that we have. Choose the relationships option inside of Access, and then using the dialog box, open all of the tables so that they display as so. If you have them open, you're going to need to close them so that we can then see in our relationships area all of the tables. Here you'll notice that you can see the primary keys inside of each of the table. In order for relationships to be established between the tables, simply drag the primary key into the location where the foreign key is located. You'll notice that the relationship type is a one-to-many. We need to enforce the referential integrity and ensure the cascade update and cascade delete options are selected. I'm going to move over to ticket type, and I'm going to drag the ticket type into the ticket sales ID. Make sure there's a one-to-many relationship there. And finally, we're going to move the customer ID out of the customer table and place this inside the ticket sales. We're going to enforce the referential integrity, cascade the update and cascade delete, and click create. Now we should have our relationships between our tables established, and hopefully that will mean that the data will cascade between the 2 or 3 or 4 tables so that we know that we've got the correct information present. So what I'm going to do now is just open up the tables just to see if the relationships are established between them, and I can notice as soon as I've opened some of the tables that there are little plus signs next to the primary key. If we click on these, they'll expand open and they'll see the links between the data. So we can see that Mildred Mitchell, our customer ID number 1, has bought ticket number 1000 and 1001, and we can see that Eric Ferguson has bought ticket number 1004 and 1005. But this works for all of the tables, so we can see how many people or what tickets were linked to new customers or regular customers or organising customers or guest organisers, and then we can see what tickets are for what days as well. So you can see that there's an allocation there for camping tickets, Saturday tickets and Friday tickets.